All right, we're back for a bonus round with Susan, and we just started talking offline. We're like, let's go and have a little bit more of a conversation. And it started off with talking a little bit about what's next. And one of the things that she was just sharing was one of the most important things that most people don't understand what's going on in the ocean. And I'll just give you the floor to share a little bit more about that.
Well, in my book about the deep ocean, the underworld, I write a chapter about deep sea mining. Now, some people have heard of it, some people haven't. It hasn't happened. It doesn't occur right now in the ocean on any sort of industrial scale, but it is. It looks like it might be happening. It looks like it might be imminent. And one of the reasons why I wrote about it and why I spent a long time thinking about it and researching it is because it has the potential to be the most destructive thing that we've ever done on Earth, like not just by a little bit. And it's kind of complicated and kind of political. So I wanted to try to put it in a sort of a narrative form so that people could really understand it without having to make the kind of horrifying deep dive that I made. So essentially, what it is that it is what it sounds like. We would be strip mining the seafloor, and there are three different kinds of deep sea mining. But the first one, and they're all awful, but the first one is to basically think of a forest being clear cut, but you take the top 20 feet of topsoil too, and that's what they would be doing on the seafloor to get these little nodules that form at certain depths on abyssal plains. So 15,000 feet in certain areas of the ocean, there are these really cool metal orbs. And if you think of how pearls grow around a nucleus and it takes forever for them to grow, that's what happens, but with metals. So there might be like a fossilized shark's tooth, and then over literally tens and hundreds of millions of years, you might get something that becomes the size of, say, a plum or an orange. And if you cut it in half, you would find cobalt, manganese, copper, nickel, and some other trace minerals. But it isn't completely inert. There's microorganisms that live inside it, under it, on it. So in a way, it's like trees and corals more than, say, lumps of rock. And these are very, we don't know what their purpose is in the ocean. We know they take a really long time to form. We don't, microbes are involved in the process. Nobody understands exactly how. And so this first phase of deep sea mining would just be to take these nodules in. Ironically, the purpose would be because the cobalt and nickel to create electric car batteries to give us a greener quote unquote future. But there's all kinds of problems with this. And the major one is that we don't even understand the ecosystem that we would be destroying. We haven't got the slightest clue what its role is in the sort of biochemistry of the ocean. We don't know any of the species. It would disrupt the sediments that have all this microbial life that are doing like really heavy lifting in terms of bioregulation, carbon cycling. It's a very bad idea to do this. Once these nodules are gone, they can't be replaced. They're gone on human time scales. Like, you know, anything approximating human time scale, you never get these back. So it's incredibly unwise thing to do. And because it looks like the waters that would be mined first, seafloor would be beneath the waters of the high seas. So that whole thing is kind of administrated by this group called the International Seabed Authority under the UN. Countries that signed the Law of the Sea have a vote in this, but it's not a very democratic group, and it's been captured by corporate interests. So scientists are kind of racing to figure out how to stop this. They've asked for a moratorium of 10 to 30 years to at least just to figure out, like, what would we even be doing? What would happen? Like, what would we lose? So that seems like the very least we could do. And of all the things that I've learned about that I don't like that happen in the ocean, like incredibly amounts of plastic filtering down even to the very deepest trenches, reckless industrial fishing, this just puts them all in the shade. The average mine site would be 30,000 square miles. And there are a lot of countries that are really anxious to do this. China's one of them. Norway is one of them. But there are also a lot of countries that are asking for a pause, a precautionary pause, a moratorium. And interestingly, the U.S. didn't ratify the Treaty of the Law of the Sea, so we're not a player in this. So it's really hard to even tell people, like, okay, what do you do? to stop this. But I have been referring people to this group called the Deep Sea Conservation Coalition, and their website is savethehighseas.org. And they have fact sheets and they have all kinds of news about the progress of this. And so far, so good. We've managed to prevent it from happening this summer, which is when it was supposed to start. And many big companies like Google, Samsung, BMW, Volvo have understood that it's not okay to do this and have vowed not to use seabed minerals in their supply chains until at the very least we understand what the impact of this would be. But I like to think of it as a kind of a wisdom test. I mean, this is a very big carbon sink. Are we actually going to reach down through 3 miles of seawater and gouge up the seafloor in an environment that is pretty pristine? I mean, it's not completely untouched because it's got our microplastics, it's got our persistent organic pollutants, but it's largely untouched. And we haven't done that much there. And I feel like all of a sudden you're going to be bringing noise, light, vibration, sediment clouds. None of the creatures are adapted to this. All of the creatures in the mining area would be killed. They would spew out the detritus from this into the twilight zone. So all of a sudden, this very clear water where everybody's communicating with bioluminescence would be filled with a haze 24 hours a day, 365 days a year of sediment being redeposited, not at the seafloor, but in the midwater. The whole thing is just a nightmare. And so I really try to make people as aware of it as I can. I think that we can stop it. I think the ocean will also have a say in this, but God, I hope we can stop it.
Well, I can feel your how serious this is. For somebody that doesn't see it and they're like, well, it doesn't really affect me. I'm landlocked and stuff. Like, how do you help them make the connection that you are connected to this?
I mean, the ocean runs everything. It runs every system on the planet. It runs the climate. I mean, the thing that you advocates of this will say is that, okay, well, it's very destructive to mine on land, and it is, and we could do a much better job of that. Cobalt in particular is really ugly. There's child labor, there's all this stuff, but keep in mind that even if we wipe away this whole area that's between Mexico and Hawaii called the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, which has these nodules, it's scheduled to be mined first if it starts. It won't replace any terrestrial mines. It would only add a fraction to the global output of both cobalt and nickel. So it wouldn't be like we suddenly don't have to deal with the ugliness of terrestrial mining. Also, because
it's not outweighing the benefit. Like it's not like it's the amount of things that are being destroyed for what we're getting. It just doesn't seem from what you're describing. It doesn't seem
and just so many uncertainties and risks, and particularly in a time when we really need the natural carbon capturing systems that are still intact to remain intact. We need to create more of them too. But also because cobalt is such a nasty thing to mine, a lot of battery manufacturers are trying to move away from the chemistry of cobalt and nickel. And Tesla, I think, is really trying hard to move away from cobalt. So 5 years from now, who knows what metals we're going to need more of. It may not be these metals, but once this starts, it's going to be really, like, once the door is kicked open, it's going to be really hard to shut it. And again, this International Seabed Authority is pretty unaccountable to you or me. I mean, this is all supposed to be done, quote unquote, for the benefit of mankind. But to me, that means we should have a vote in whether or not it happens. And at this particular moment, we can only, as consumers, just refuse to accept this. I mean, that's the best I can do at this particular moment, and just raising awareness and sending people to get more information, because it's the potential, the destructive potential of it is just off the charts.
And you're suggesting also the unintended consequences, we have no idea.
Yeah.
And we're just playing with something that we don't know what's going to go out of balance here by doing something this dramatic.
Well, and so much of what would be disturbed is microbial, and 80% of the microbial life on Earth is in the ocean, and a lot of it's in the deep ocean, and as I said, even beneath the seafloor. And these microbes are ancient and doing really unusual things. They will be the source of all kinds of new biomaterials, new medicines. Like, we have so much to learn from these sediments. And also, not to mention, it's the history of the paleoclimatology of the Earth. Like, wrecking the sediments is not like kicking over a pile of sand. They're completely alive, and they contain like Earth's DNA database, deep archive of genomic creativity and strategies for resilience. I mean, it's just really heedless, reckless to do this, and I just think it's a wisdom test. We got to pass one of these days.
It's like to me the parallel is like the loss of the rainforest in Brazil. How many medicine that could be created, natural medicine, we could be destroying by doing that. And I think that's another argument, is like what possible new resourceful way that we could create more better life on Earth with what's there than destroying what's there.
Yeah, and we should have learned. And just to give you an example of the type of thing that might be found, at abyssal depths in the Atlantic Ocean, about 20 years ago, scientists found a microbe that creates a compound that they've been working with, and it will be the first sort of natural marine medicine. It kills glioblastoma cells dead. And glioblastoma is this, to date, has been this incurable brain cancer. It's the cancer that killed John McCain. And there's so many strategies for survival for these microbes. And this microbe, in fact, it's in its final clinical trials. It will be a huge breakthrough. And who knows what else is down there? They even think it has effects on other kinds of cancer cells. I mean, really, we need extra cell phone batteries that bad? I mean, can't we recycle the ones we've got a little bit better? The whole thing is just, we got to step up here.
Well, I'm going to make sure the word gets out. Thank you for giving this little bonus extra amount. I'll make sure that we distribute it as almost like a little beacon of support for you as well. But it sounds to me like maybe there's another book about microbes, because you're really,
it's interesting. I would love to do it if I could figure out a way to make them characters. I mean, I'm always I feel like when I'm writing about science, I want to tell a story. I want to take readers on an adventure. So it's not daunting. I'm trying to make this everybody has so much competition for their time and their energy, what they spend their attention on. So, we got to have a good story. How do I make microbes characters? If I can figure out how to do that.
If anybody can do it, you can.
Yeah.
You already did. You're already, the way you're describing, I was like, there's none of it that was uninteresting to me. You made me very interested in this topic. So thank you.
I'm still learning how to talk about it without completely freaking out.
Yeah.
It's so awful.
Well, thank you so much for the work you do.
I think we can stop it. So
and we'll do our best to share this wherever we can. And if you want to afterwards, just send me all the links that you want me to add to I'll make this as a separate little post.
Sure.
And just to review, what would be the address that people should go to?
SaveTheHighSeas.org.
SaveTheHighSeas.org. There you have it.
It's a great all-in-one spot to learn more, to see what's new in this. It's a fight. This is a battle. And it's ongoing. It's happening now. So yeah, it'd be great for people. And I think the chapter in my book, I really spent a long time sort of like trying to encapsulate it all into this one narrative chapter. It comes near the end of the book, and on purpose, right? Because by then, what's at stake. You've traveled through these various depths of the ocean.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Till next time, mahalo again.